the time we live in today, investing in machine technology can be an overwhelming and daunting process. No one wants to make the wrong investment and then be stuck with a solution that doesn't meet the needs of the company. But where should a company start when beginning to research machine technology? What should they be looking for in a CNC machine? And what questions should they be asking? We at Microvellum, along with our industry partner C.R. Onsrud, are very happy to answer those questions for you. We're here at this beautiful facility of C.R. Onsrud here in Troutman, North Carolina. We're speaking to Thomas Tuck, a regional account manager for C.R. Onsrud. Thomas, I know you've been in the industry a very long time, but could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Started off doing woodworking in high school, cabinet making classes and learning about various types of wood and whatnot, and kind of transitioned that into a degree at Appalachian State University in furniture design and manufacturing, and just kind of found it in my blood, so to speak, and love the industry. So somehow wiggled my way into the machinery side of it, but it's a lot of fun getting to work with companies looking to achieve certain goals or solve certain problems, help them with their struggles from a manufacturing level, and incorporating technology and having some fun along the way.
As we've walked around this facility, we've seen all types of different machines, all types of equipment, different options within those machines. Could you tell us, what are some questions that typically you ask customers that reach out to you when contemplating or considering adding a CNC to their process?
So we really try to partner up with companies and get to know them first, really dig deep into what they believe they need. Let's talk about what their vision is, what they're currently doing, and how that growth may impact their business over time. And it's kind of like a doctor's visit. You have a problem, there could be some different solutions to that. So we got to have a couple meetings and a couple discussions to figure out, which path is best for that individual, because there's no one way to do it. There's a couple different ways, a couple different levels of technology. And that fit could be very different for two companies that are essentially doing the same thing.
Now, as I understand it, there are multiple levels of different CNC equipment. Could you explain what those levels are? And then maybe even more importantly, how would a customer understand where they fit into that process?
A CNC router investment at any level is essentially that. It's an investment. You want a return on that investment at the end of the day. And so, you have hobby type routers, small tables, very basic. You're making widgets for the flea market on the weekends. Could be an ideal solution. You have your kind of middle range, which we call the commercial level CNC router, which can be, you're getting into that more profitability, but maybe not at the scale where you need a heavy duty solution, with automation or multiple spindles or running all day, every day. And then you get kind of in the industrial level, which is that upper tier. You're an established company. You're looking to reduce your labor, increase profitability, increase output, really take your company to the next level. So you need an industrial level CNC router to do that.
So our Microvellum customers have a wide range of different shops, their customers themselves, the business that they're operating and how they're functioning. When do I know if I'm ready for an investment in automation?
The first part of what you said is, kind of related to a big piece of the puzzle, which is software. So, if a company has some type of CAD CAM or some type of design software, that can be one of those boxes to check off that, hey, you're ready for maybe your first CNC or your second, or improving the automation on that. It really comes down to, I think, a few factors, right? Productivity, how much can I produce in a shift, in a day, in a week? What are their customers demanding of them in terms of lead time, output, things of that nature. I think another big factor to determine, let's say, for example, you have a CNC router now, and maybe you're ready for that next level of automation. If you're a growing company, you need more people to handle more processes. Mm-hmm. Well, automation can certainly eliminate or reduce the amount of heads that you have to have as you grow. So, incorporating more productivity, how can I control my labor? Or maybe you're just struggling finding good labor. Automation can certainly help with those things.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen that throughout the pandemic too, for sure. So Thomas, what questions do you start with when a customer reaches out to you to really determine the best fit?
There's a lot of questions, as you try to help a customer, as a let's say a trusted advisor, or, somewhat of a consultant. You definitely, you got to get to know them and build that trust with them. And throughout that process, we try to identify a few key factors that really help tell us what size, what level of automation, what type of technology, or maybe even software that maybe they need to be successful. So, what types of materials? Is it just sheet goods? What sizes? What thicknesses? Do we, vision incorporating, let's say, solid wood and millwork, things of that nature? Where are we at today? And where do we want to be in a few years? So versatility is something we see a lot of, people wanting to not just be, kind of streamlined in one direction of their business, but they want to cater to a couple different markets. So, how does that versatility of the business impact how we would build or tailor a machine for somebody? What are we starting with? Those are things that are very important. Labor force. The machine can definitely be something that is easily taught, but we have to have good programmers. We have to have a CAD CAM department of some sort. So do we have the personnel to kind of start that process? And maybe even something as simple as, what are our limitations? Can we fit a certain size machine in the building? Do we have ample amount of power? Do we have good dust collection? What are the limitations that may help drive us into what the best fit is, or those limitations that maybe drive what we just can do because of those limitations?
So as someone's evaluating whether or not to add CNC manufacturing or automation into their process, how should they determine, should it be a nested-based CNC or a point-to-point and maybe beam saw combination, more of a cell-based manufacturing?
There's a lot of different ways to accomplish the end goal, right? But I think along that process, the versatility is very, very important, because point-to-points, pot and rail machines, and panel saw, what you may refer to as cut band bore operation, is really dedicated more for high volume of cabinetry. But what you may be limited on is the versatility to do other materials or other types of millwork, or things that your customers may ask you in the cabinet industry, let's say. So how important is that versatility today, tomorrow, 5 years from now? Production, am I doing 40 sheets a day? Am I doing 100, 200? Where am I at today? Where do I want to be? A lot of times, you can create a ceiling with an investment, and you can outgrow that solution very easily. So incorporating that future growth that you grow into the CNC, or whatever the solution may be, is very, very important. So if that high volume panel processing is something that they visualize really growing tremendously over the next 3, 4, 5 years, then yeah, maybe a point-to-point panel saw is the right operation. But if they're just not sure, maybe let's say yield is very, very important to them. Maybe a nested-based router is the right fit. So weighing both options, I think, is a great question for anybody to ask us. Why should I do this or why not?
Yeah, excellent. I totally agreed as well. Yeah. So when is the right time to add a CNC?
It's really tough to say, and it's funny you asked this question. I was talking to a company a couple months ago, and they asked a very similar question. And the best way I could explain it, and I know this is going to sound kind of corny, but when my wife and I decided we wanted to have kids, we were trying to figure out when's the right time, and there really isn't an answer to that.
Right.
You maybe have to have a core few things in place. You got to have a facility, right? You got to have some knowledge of what type of construction method or materials you may want to use. You got to have maybe the ability to want to learn how to program something. So, there maybe isn't a right time, but if you're passionate about changing your business, about, improving the output, improving the product that you're selling to your customers, and really taking your company to that next level, it's probably the right time. But I wouldn't say there's always a January 1st of every year is the right time,
Perfect
or when you
scenario.
hit a certain sales amount, because that CNC could help take your business to that next level. You may not want to wait till your business is at that level. It may be too late.
So are you saying we can program our kids?
Potentially, if you have the right CAD CAM team.
All right, I like it. Yeah. How important is software?
Well, the machine is dumb, essentially. You have to tell it what to do, right? And that's where design software, and more specifically CAD CAM, comes into play. It's not just going to run itself.
Yeah.
So, in some cases, I'll even recommend to companies looking at investing in CNC that let's separate these conversations, right? And maybe even start with the software so that you can design, maybe implement some cost or estimating in your cabinetry. Learn, kind of some of the core basics. Get 50% or 30% through the learning curve, and then implementing the CNC can actually be easier if you have that knowledge rather than trying to do everything at once. So, CAD CAM is very important because the machine doesn't run without it.
Yeah, excellent. I've seen that too with our customers. I totally agree with you. Implementing a CAD CAM software like Microvellum allows their business to really grow. They save time, time equals money, and then we get to see them. I get to see them as an account manager now add a CNC into their business like the one behind us, and then it's just to the next level of automation and time savings and business growth.
Absolutely. And the investment of the software can be just or even more important than the investment of the CNC, because since everything starts, with the software, that can really help improve the productivity or the time that maybe your CAD engineer has to spend to get parts out to the CNC. So it's essentially, what I said, it's an investment, and getting a larger return on that investment of the software, the CNC really will help transform someone's business.
So we've talked about the importance of software, things that are commonly considered in the evaluation of automation and CNC technology. What are some of the things that often get overlooked?
We try to look at the importance of vacuum, for example. You have software, you have a machine, but if you can't hold the parts in place, it's essentially not going to work, right? So a lot of productivity can be gained by investing in the right type of vacuum pump. Dust collection, another good example. Maybe a little better dust collector helps you sweep less. At the end of the day, can really help you minimize time that your operator or somebody else has to do other jobs, in the facility. Tooling, another good example. Tooling is a cost.
Yeah.
So how can we improve the life of that tool? What different types of materials, diamond tip tools or carbide tools, a lot of different flute variations. How can I maximize the life of that tool and finish quality of my part? So, there's lots of these little bits and pieces that sometimes you're really not thinking about because we're, excited about the potential of a CNC, but are very important to incorporate in just understanding how the total solution works and what each segment or what each piece of that puzzle means, and ultimately getting the proper training on those things. There's a lot of things that don't get talked about. And so we at C.R. Onsrud try to really take that hand-holding approach because we want you to maximize the output of that investment that you've made. So incorporating things like, proper maintenance and PMs and, when to do that and what a dull tool sounds like and maybe when to replace those things really help you maximize and leverage that investment.
So what does it take to maintain equipment like this?
A lot of it's very basic, and we implement the training process when we install a machine to educate the operator and the customer on how to do your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly maintenance. It's kind of always a pet peeve of mine in a way when, we work with a company for several months or several years on implementing that CNC that's going to make them, boatloads of money and help take their business to the next level. And he's driving an $80,000 truck that's pristine, looks perfect, like it just came off the lot. And then a year later, you go back to the CNC machine and it's dirty and it looks like it's 5 years old. So a lot of the basic things that we incorporate into our lives, from cleaning your house to washing your truck, changing the oil, it's the same with the CNC machine. But the difference here is that the CNC machine or other technology in the company's business is what makes them the money to buy all the other things,
Sure.
the boats and the cars and the house and all this stuff. So protect your investment, right? I mean, very basic things of lubricating, replacing collets are affordable and necessity, but can get overlooked and then kind of add up to maybe some bigger issues in the future. It's a machine at the end of the day. Even if you maintain it perfectly and you follow the schedule, at some point, because you've used it, an accident happened, things are going to break. So, having the proper team behind the machine, who's going to handle the service and support? How quickly can I get a part when something does happen? How quickly can I talk to a technician on the phone when I'm struggling with something or I need to replace that component on my own? C.R. Onsrud were made in North Carolina. We use domestic components when and where we can. Our goal with building a CNC is to kind of make a more robust solution, something with a little higher end components. So there is a little bit less maintenance.
Yeah.
Those components do last longer, but essentially be able to support our customers when they do need, that part or that person to help them.
Much like with software, what's the difference between just an initial sale of a piece of equipment to a partnership with someone?
It's not about the actual sale. It's about what happens before and what happens after.
Yeah.
So no matter what your company makes and what you're selling, whether it's furniture or cabinetry or millwork, maintaining partnerships is a lot about communication, building that relationship. So, I think once you can kind of do that, it makes everything else a little bit easier because you have that trust. You kind of have that fluidity to, the conversations, or, you don't feel like you're bothering somebody by visiting them or calling them at night and, saying, hey, here's what we got going on. How can we help each other? How can you help me? So, I mean, that relationship is very important. And, it's a lot easier in the long run to have repetitive customers as well. So the better that C.R. Onsrud can take care of our customers and make sure that we're working on the machine build and making the spec to fit them, and the easier it is in 15 or 20 years, 25 years, when that machine comes to the end of its life, or maybe they need a second one for additional capacity, that we have established that relationship and there's that trust factor to help that company move forward and continue to be successful.
Absolutely. Okay, Thomas. So I've decided I'm buying my first CNC machine. What are the must-have features that I have to have no matter what, even with my modest budget?
Fortunately, every CNC already comes with a spindle. So check that box off.
That's
right?
good, yeah.
Well, so I'll elaborate on a couple things that I hear from companies that maybe started out with a less expensive solution, what they, let's say, regret. Vacuum is something we talked about being very, very important. Holding the parts in place, not having to onion skin and cut everything twice, or, maybe being able to achieve a little faster feed rates.
Sure. Save time.
Yeah. But, one of the most common ways to reduce cost of a CNC is to way undersize the vacuum pump to where you might as well have a shop vac holding those parts down.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I've never heard of a customer say, you know what, Thomas, I wish I would have bought less vacuum.
Yeah, right.
But the opposite does happen.
Sure.
Right? So investing in a good, vacuum pump or, vacuum blower, there's a lot of different types out there and a lot of different price points, but, good pressure and good CFM based on, the size of the table that you're looking at considering and the material that you're cutting.
Okay. What else?
At least try to incorporate a little bit of growth. If you're doing X number of parts or X number of sheets, or what you're doing today, well, you don't want to outgrow that solution a year or two or three down the road. If you do, go into it at least knowing and acknowledging, hey, this is a 2 to 3 year investment, so I can learn, I can have an ROI, and then maybe I'll be ready for that industrial CNC that we talked about earlier. So, don't shortchange yourself too much. See what, another $5,000 would get you, or another $10,000. What extra, amount of features or extra amount of production, or could I hold parts better if I got a little better vacuum pump? And certainly the most important thing, I think, in that process is the right software investment. You can buy a $50 package of software, but if you have to spend 4 hours programming a part that for $5,000 or $10,000 could have took you 20 minutes. Your time's worth something.
Sure.
Right. Software is a great thing because if you bought a inexpensive, let's say $30,000 router today, and you got $30,000 worth of software, that $30,000 of software could be applied to whatever future technology or machine that you're looking to invest in. So it's something that can kind of carry over, but without that good software, and if it's something that takes up a lot of time, you're really not maximizing that investment.
What are the pros and cons of a moving table compared to a moving gantry?
The first CNC router C.R. Onsrud ever made was a moving table. It had two tables to implement something we call pendulum processing. So while the spindle is cutting on one table, the operator can be unloading and reloading the next table. That's the first machine that Tom Onsrud ever designed and made, actually for our own personal use at the time, but then we started manufacturing and selling to customers. So pendulum processing is something to consider of, what's my component or sheet size or part size? How much time does it take me to unload and reload that? That can be an advantage of a moving table or maybe even a long bed moving gantry machine.
Okay.
Space is definitely a factor that could be a pro or a con.
Yeah.
With a moving table, you're moving that table size. So just visualize a 5x10 table has to move essentially twice the size of the table.
Sure.
So it could take up a lot more footprint. So again, limitations could be a factor in determining what the best fit is. There's a lot of reliability aspects, in terms of what can last me longer, what's the maintenance procedures look like on either, or rigidity, finish quality. So, to give you an example, in the plastics industry, it's not the end all be all, but a lot of those manufacturers, plastic distributors and fabricators love a fixed bridge moving table because we're moving the mass. We're able to really, improve the finish quality. As that machine, wears and as we use it, we're able to maintain really good finish quality, really good accuracies. So, it's kind of more of a question of what's important to you, right? Space, reliability, finish quality, price point really may determine or help us, with a company together, look at what the best fit is, pun intended, and what the best solution is for them.
What should companies consider when selecting drill heads and configurations?
Multiple spindle drill units, there's a lot of options out there. Sometimes it kind of comes down to time. How many holes, how many times are we going to make a drop to produce, let's say, a closet? Could be very different than how many holes and how many drops do I have to produce to do an upper panel in a kitchen cabinet. So if time is important, a larger drill unit can certainly save time, but it also can come at a cost.
Certainly.
Or the ability to, implement horizontal drilling. So if I'm, based on my construction method, if I'm looking at doing some doweling, and I want to have a pod or, some type of workpiece elevation to do holes in the side of that, let's say, cabinet part, that could be an important aspect for that flexibility and maybe future growth. What kind of cycle times and outputs am I looking for at the end of the day or the end of the shift? Can a smaller or larger drill head help me? Is it worth the money to spend it? Sometimes that answer is yes. Sometimes that answer is no. So really understanding somebody's goals is very important in us making some of those recommendations.
There's so many options. Do I need a twin table machine?
I don't know. That's a question we get a lot. A lot of the times, the answers of what do I need? I think first we really have to establish, what are the goals, right? What is the vision? Because, there's advantages to certain technologies, certain types of machines, moving table, moving gantry, double table, long table, automation. So, it's important for us to understand, what do you visualize this machine doing for you? When you turn it on day one, you look back a week later, what is the output that you expect? How do you expect it to help your business? There's kind of some pain aspects, to every company's business. And, we want to solve that pain with the right solution. And, for some people it's double table. For some people it's two machines, single table. redundancy is maybe a high level of importance for their business. So the solutions can really just vary based on who you are, what you do, where do you want to go.
The company needs
Absolutely.
now and into the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the basics of CNC machinery. Behind us here is an awesome looking machine with all types of different options on it from what I can tell. Can you talk to me and to the audience just about what those options are, how automation fits into that, maybe if someone's looking for a CNC now or maybe even to their future growth?
The saying goes, time is money, right? So if we can save that company time doing multiple processes or one individual thing that really is hindering kind of their production, then it's worth at least taking a look at. So the machine behind me here has multiple spindles, multiple drill heads, full automation of loading and unloading, but also pre-staging. So there's not time to wait on a forklift driver to bring more material over. So, we've kind of looked at all the different ways we can take time out of that process, because at the end of the day, most companies want to be profitable. And the longer it takes to do something, the less they can put out.
Sure.
And essentially, the more we can put out, that takes less time, the more profit we can make. So at that point, everybody wins.
Yeah.
There is a lot of options. And, this particular model is a moving table. Moving table is, a little faster of a solution in terms of acceleration, deacceleration, reducing the cycle time of the actual cut. So for this particular company, speed was everything. So we checked off all the boxes, implemented a lot of automation, looked at the, one of the fastest, most reliable solutions that C.R. Onsrud manufactures, and ultimately it was the right fit for them, and taking their business to the next level.
What are the benefits of an integrated auto labeling system compared to the more common on-demand labeling system included in most software options?
If I have to manually apply 10 labels, maybe 90% of the time those labels are in the right place, and I got 10% that they're not, and I got 10% more problems. So anything that I can automate allows me to have more productivity at the end of the day. And labeling is an opportunity to do that, not only because it can happen before the sheet even turns into parts, but also it can be done accurately and very, very reliable.
Yeah, if I could add, there's also a cool factor to the process too of labeling parts for you from the CNC is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a great example of an investment. I mean, it's not inexpensive to automate labeling. So there's an ROI process to anything. So, if you're a manufacturer and you're manually labeling, look at the rework. Look at the parts that go missing. What are we having to redo, and what's causing us to turn gray and pull our hair out? What is the value of that? And also, what time or what amount of time does it take the operator to physically apply those? Add those numbers up, and we're going to pretty quickly be able to determine together labeling the way you're doing it now is the best option, or automating is the way to go.
Yeah. Much like with all of this, if we can save time and eliminate errors, then great. That equals ROI for the business. A lot of customers may be watching and they have a 3-axis machine. They're thinking to themselves, am I ready for a 5-axis machine? What would you say?
That's a great question, but what comes before 5?
4?
4. And for a lot of people, a 4-axis where I'm rotating, horizontal aggregate or a saw blade, or, adding an aggregate attachment can be the right fit for them. 5-axis is, it's kind of a different game, if you will. So, a lot more to think about in terms of, size of machine. How big of a part do I want to do, and Z height and clearances and software. A huge important aspect in 5-axis more than 3-axis, because my 3-axis software that I'm running cabinetry on, it may not be the right fit to run a 5-axis, right? So are you open and willing to learn more software, a different software, but also, kind of a different mindset, different way of thinking when you're programming that. So it's an exciting piece of technology, 5-axis, and some of the things that we do at trade shows. And we sell a lot of 5-axis machines, and so there's a lot of times that it is a great fit for people. But we also do a lot of 4-axis machines. And a lot of times that is a better fit because of maybe the software aspect, or, just really not needing to have that investment or that purchase that doesn't equal investment. It's definitely a kind of a deeper conversation, and something we would love to have that opportunity to figure out together. Hey, is it the right fit? And have that company tell me why they're even thinking about it. Let's figure it out together.
So where does a controller fit into all of this? How important is it?
Very important. It's, the brains of the CNC. So, it does a lot of things behind the scene that a lot of people don't understand, translating, post-processor and NC files and, CAD/CAM code into G code, M code, the language that a CNC runs off of. So if the brain of the machine isn't reliable, doesn't offer, productivity and performance, you're kind of not really getting as much out of your investment as possible. So at C.R. Onsrud, we use industrial controls. We are Fanuc's largest OEM in North America, and Fanuc is the largest control manufacturer in the world. Very well known for that performance and reliability. And just to give you an example, 30 years down the road, you want a part for a Fanuc machine, they have a guarantee on that. They measure their downtime in decades. 52 years is the mean time between failures. So, if you're struggling with that parts and service aspect and you're a CNC owner now, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, but you're curious, it's definitely something that's important to consider, and why that reliability, why that guarantee can equal more dollars, more productivity for your business. So it's a very important thing. And another one of those things that kind of gets overlooked, right? When we're, let's say, at a trade show, we kind of get so excited about what a CNC can do, but not a lot of people are curious or really even understand, how does this thing even run? Like, where does the information come from? And, why is that important? So, those are things that we'd love to educate people a little bit more on, and help them understand why it's important and how that machine can really be profitable and productive with the right control system. So, in addition to that, profitability and productivity, reliability, ease of use, you put a ad in the paper for a CNC control operator, CNC router operator. Fanuc is taught in a lot of schools. So that can really bring people a lot of peace of mind that, who am I going to run this thing? And if my operator leaves, how am I going to still, manage my business? Well, the ability to find somebody that understands that and knows that, or has had some experience with that, whether they're coming from the metal or the aerospace industry, Fanuc being the most common, your likelihood of finding someone's pretty high. And one thing I kind of forgot to mention on that reliability aspect is, you have your industrial controls, Fanuc being, the example and the preferred control manufacturer that C.R. Onsrud uses, but you also have the other side of a PC control. Both of them kind of get, the job done the same way essentially, but that aspect of reliability and performance is a huge, huge difference. Fanuc controls are made and designed and engineered to run in difficult environments and kind of put through the paces, and there's a level or a standard that they meet. A PC is not essentially designed to run a CNC router. It can do it, but at the end of the day, the investment is in something that's kind of made for that type of CNC equipment, that type of technology.
Just walking through many factories, even at trade shows, seeing all different types of CNC equipment. Some of them look like they're sitting on toothpicks. Some of them look like the extreme opposite of that, like the one behind us. How important is machine weight?
It's not an irrelevant factor, let's put it like that. But the design, engineering, and construction of that machine is probably more important, definitely more important. You don't want a dump truck whose 0 to 60 is an hour, right? You want good fuel efficiency, good speed. Yeah, and you want the dump truck, right? So you got to have the right mix of everything in that puzzle. So we design and engineer our equipment using full FEA analysis, thermal stress relieving, thick, heavy steel, but it's not over-engineered so it just looks big. It still performs fast like a Ferrari or, Cadillac with a super turbo engine in it or what have you. That's kind of where we want to find that good mix of everything rather than building it on toothpicks or building it like a dump truck.
So I know with software we deal with this question a lot, but on the CNC side, what options are available to help minimize part movement?
So I like to make smoothies, right? And in doing that, you got to have proper ingredients, right? If I leave out the strawberries, it just doesn't taste as good. It's not a successful smoothie, right? So the ingredients of good part hold down, a lot of it's software. A lot of it is proper vacuum flow. So not just having the size of pump that you may need, but flow, distribution of vacuum. That comes down to kind of the design engineering of the machine that you have or you're considering. Tooling can be an important aspect in that too. If I'm trying to cut something too fast with half-inch diameter cutter, I'd be putting a lot of force on that part. If I went to a 3/8 diameter tool, I'm putting less force. So there's a couple variables there. So essentially those ingredients are kind of the same core things. But the flavors change a little bit based on the material you're cutting, the type of machine you have, how fast and productive you want to be. So software, tooling, vacuum flow, distribution, holding that part down. Those are the main key factors.
Yeah, certainly. How important is tooling in all of this?
There's price of machine. What does it cost me to purchase this? But then you have cost of machine, right? What is my operation cost? And tooling, you're using them every day.
Right.
So that can be, a big factor in that profitability of utilizing CNC technology. So there's a lot of math that kind of goes into tooling that some people don't understand to maximize your chip load.
Yeah.
Which ultimately helps you prolong or maximize the life of that tool. So I recommend to a lot of people, no matter what industry they're in, what type of CNC they have, whether it's an Onsrud or a different brand, to lean on your local tooling rep or even, call C.R. Onsrud. We have an in-house tooling department that has a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, sees the good, the bad, and the ugly, and can make great recommendations on how to help you improve the life of the tool, improve the quality and the finish of that cut, improve part hold down, or even if it's something custom, custom profile or an aspect of tooling that'll help you decrease the cut time and improve that production capability.
Now, most shops would love to add a CNC like we see behind us or any CNC. What are some of the hurdles, though, that they would face in implementing that into their business?
I've probably seen it all. But I think one important thing is, the feedback that we get and kind of the excuses that companies give themselves not to do it. So, I mean, you have your very basic and common things like, we don't have enough space, we can't get financing, we're just not at that level yet. I don't have a door big enough to actually fit it in the room, common things like that. And a lot of those are true stories and, aspects that are limitations. Some of those things we talked about earlier, facility requirements, power. But one thing that, I hear sometimes from some people at companies where there's a team of people, let's say it's 6 people that are all on this committee of finding and selecting the right CNC for their business. There's always one person in there that kind of throws a wrench in it, and, I've heard anything from, the production manager doesn't want it. He wants to keep all his employees. Well, when you invest in technology, you're more profitable. You're more productive. You can actually probably look at it the opposite. That you're going to need to hire more employees.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not replacing. It's sometimes retraining. Right. So that's kind of a common misconception that automation is replacing people. And that does happen. But there's also a variable of this is going to help us grow. We need to retain those people, retrain, and we're probably going to need to hire some new people because we're going to be so busy. Right. getting the buy-in of, let's pretend that your company has a CNC now, and this guy, he loves this router, this CNC, and you're considering investing in something that's more profitable. I've had operators kind of really push back on replacing a CNC with more technology because they fear it's kind of, or they look at it as job security. Mm-hmm. If they get something that's more productive, what do they need me for?
Yeah.
And so kind of going back to the previous example, I mean, we still need operators, we still need assemblers, we still need programmers, so trying to get the buy-in of the people on the floor is very important, because ultimately in let's say the upstairs or in the office, the people that see the numbers, if you don't get the buy-in from the people on the floor, and you put it in place, it's probably not going to be as successful as if you incorporate their feedback. Definitely look at it as a team aspect, to overcome those hurdles. Financing can be another common thing. We like to help people with that if we need to, in-house financing, or even simple things like helping the ROI and the justification. We can do cycle times, we can do demos. You can tell us, here's the goal that we need to have to justify this. How can we get there, and what does that package look like? And if it fits, great. Everybody's looking like superstars, and we all win, and we make new friends and new partners. And sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. Let's revisit it in the future. So that partnership of what we try to do at C.R. Onsrud is very important, because we want to be a part of the team, helping the justification, help you overcome those goals, implement the solution, get the buy-in of the team, and kind of educate you on that process along the way.
All right, Thomas. You've sold me. I am buying a CNC. How much does it cost?
First off, hopefully it just wasn't a sale. Hopefully it was an investment, because essentially that's really what it is. And our goal is to help you maximize that return on investment with the right solution. So, I mean, in general, CNC routers, machining centers, can range from $5,000 to $5 million. The justification, is part of that process, but essentially every manufacturer wants the same thing. I want to make more money. In some ways, the price of the machine is one thing. The cost of the machine is another thing. Mm-hmm. But what is that return on that investment? I could work with somebody on a less expensive machine mm-hmm. that's going to give them a really quick payback and return on that investment. But eventually they're going to have to buy a second one because they've maximized the capacity. Whereas if that machine was more expensive to begin with and they grew into it long term, they're going to have a better return on that investment. Right. So there's a lot of variations, a lot of variables, to really answer your question appropriately. But what it costs is really based on what is the profitability that you're going to receive out of it.
Absolutely. And really with that too, shop owners tell me all the time two things they wish they would have done sooner: buy Microvellum and buy their CNC.
There you go.
They usually say those are the best two things they've ever done as far as a business decision.
Yeah. Like we were talking about earlier, there's no right time. If you have a problem, there's a way to solve it. And sometimes, you may think, well, I don't have enough space, or, it's not the right time, or, I don't want to spend the time to run more compressed air. Mm-hmm. Well, if you buy the CNC, and you buy the software, you're kind of forcing yourself in a way to implement those pieces to the puzzle to get that return on investment. So, not to say you want to put the cart before the horse all the time. Yeah. But if you keep waiting till the right time, or you don't really look at it as that return on investment, you may never get there. And eventually you may be behind.
Yeah. Usually the only regret is that they didn't make that decision earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of investment, I mean, I'll go back to something we were talking about earlier. I mean, software is such a huge aspect of that investment. I mean, me personally, I would much rather spend less time clicking and drawing and things like that, and not have to have a full-time CAD/CAM operator or CAD engineer, and implement some automation on the software side. Sure. So that I can get things out to the shop quicker, improve the stream of information, improve the process and the flow. A CNC is only as good as its software. in a lot of cases. So that's a big important piece to that overall investment as well.
Thomas, thank you so much for having us out here, answering all these questions for us. I'm positive that everyone watching this is very appreciative of all your answers and your time.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about some fun stuff today and challenges and goals and things of that nature. I got a surprise for you.
Okay.
Do you still have that USB stick with those programs on it?
Absolutely.
You got 15 minutes?
Of course, for you.
I'm going to teach you how to run this thing. Let's go have some fun.
Let's do it.
All right, come on.